Hello everyone. It is Jackie from Pocket of Preschool, and I am so excited you are here with me tonight. Tonight we are talking all about some fun activities you can do during a read aloud during circle time or small group or whenever you do your read alouds. So what I want to tell you first is up in the top of this post, I just wrote a blog post today with these strategies and ideas. That way, if you want to circle back to it later or if you want to share it with a teacher friend, you can totally do that. And there's links at the top too to the Facebook group, my newsletter, my favorite things on Amazon, all the things. So if you need something, all the links are at the top of this post. I want you to tell me in the comments, what is your all-time favorite book to read during circle for a read aloud? Like, what is your, if you could only pick one, which is so hard because there are so many good books, what is your top most favorite book in the whole wide world that you could just read over and over and over? Tell us in the comments. So tonight, like I said, we are talking all about some fun things you can do to read and reread books, some activities you can do during read aloud. So why on earth do we even do read alouds, right? Because, well, if you're like me, it's one of your favorite parts of the day. It's just that time when you see kiddos making those connections, falling in love with reading. It's just that magical time where they're making connections, they're talking to each other, they're shouting out, especially if they're 3, because they're so excited about the book and they can't wait to read, and for you to call on them when they raise their hand. They're just so excited about the book and they're so excited about what they want to say. It's just that magical time in the classroom. Does it get wild and crazy? Yes, sometimes it does. Sometimes is it super, super quiet because they're so intensely listening? Yes, it is. So it's kind of a combination of both depending on the day of the week, what season it is, if they've been outside, all the things, right? But the most important thing is you need to be excited and having fun because that excitement is contagious. So if you're excited about a read aloud in a book, they are going to be excited about a read aloud or the book or the characters or whatever you're focusing on that day. So sometimes in the classroom we read a book one time, it's like a one and done, right? We read it once and we put it back on the bookshelf and don't read it again. But then there's sometimes, and it's really important to reread books, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, even 4 or 5 times at Circle. Because every time kiddos listen to a book, there's a reason why they love listening to the same books over and over and over. Every time they reread a book, they learn something new, they find a new vocabulary word, they notice something different in the illustration, they notice something the author is doing in the book with the text. They may make a new connection. They may notice something in the text. They may notice a letter sound. They may notice a rhyme. They may notice repeated text. They may notice if it's like a math book or a science book or a book about art, they may notice something about that concept, right? Especially if it's a nonfiction book, they're always looking at those pictures and they're picking up new information, and they're just developing a deeper, they're developing like a stronger reading comprehension for that book every time they read it over and over and over again. Even though it sometimes drives us crazy, even though we're reading the same books over and over again. It's so helpful, for them. And it's to develop that fluency, right? That rhythm. Not that way when they read, it's not that when you read it, right? You want to have that rhythm with the text. You want to not read it choppy. So it's something, some books are harder to read than others. Like some books that have a lot of rhyme, or a lot of alliteration in them are sometimes trickier to read. So sometimes you have to practice those, right? But the reason we do read alouds, it's because we want kiddos, whether we read it once or for the 30 millionth time, we are reading it because we want our kiddos to, we want them to develop the skill of being able to read or listen to something and be able to make meaning from that and remember or comprehend it. So kind of listen, take it in, or read it if they're older, right? and like a lot older, like kinder or first. Read it, remember it, comprehend it, and make sense and make meaning for them, right? Because they're gonna have to do that in the world, and they're gonna have to do that when they're in those upper grades. So that's the ultimate goal, right? For us to teach them that you're not just reading and like you're reading and you're dazing out, and you're reading because there's important things in the book and you want to notice all these things, and books are exciting. And they're powerful. They can be powerful tools for you in the classroom, or powerful tools when you get older, or if you want to learn something. Or every time you read a book, this is what I would always pick a book, and I would say what objective or what learning target. We did objectives. Ours were called objectives. I know some of you guys are call them learning targets. But what objective can I match this book with? What do I need to cover in my curriculum that I haven't covered yet? Or what is a skill that they're struggling with? Are they struggling with predicting? Are they struggling with maybe some story elements like characters or setting or beginning, middle, and end or sequence? Or are they struggling with vocabulary? Or maybe they're struggling with rhymes, so you can read some rhyming books. Or maybe they're struggling with some letter sound correlations. Maybe they're struggling just focusing and attention span, because that's okay too. If you read a book and you're focusing on a social emotional goal or objective, that's a great reason for a read aloud too, because we don't have a million hours in the school day. So maybe you're reading the book to focus on sharing. Maybe you're reading a book to help them develop a friendship skill. Maybe you're reading a book on a science concept like the life cycle of a butterfly, or accounting, or adding or subtracting. So there's so many different objectives we can use when we do a read aloud. And I think it's really important when you pick out one of those really good books that you pick out an objective to go with it, so you're not just reading it on a whim, right? The more intentional you are, whether you have it written down in this amazing teacher binder or you have it on a Post-it note and it's stuck to the front of your book, or it's stuck on a piece of paper for Monday. As long as it's purposeful and you're being intentional, it doesn't matter if you write it down, how you write it down, it just matters that you're being intentional and you have a focus for your read aloud. Because if you're reading it for 3 days, because some people ask me this, like, how do you read a book over and over and over? So I will use the example of this book. So Bear Snores On. So I have the retelling cards in my Hibernation Centers pack. So the first day I read this book, I wouldn't have all of these cards out, because that would be one, overwhelming for all my kiddos, right? That would be a lot. I would say, oh my gosh, you guys, look at the book we are going to read today. And some of the characters in this book, I don't know if you have heard them before, or if you know what they are. So I want to introduce you to the characters before we read. So maybe the first day you're talking all about the characters, because maybe some of them don't know what a gopher is. Especially if you have 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds or even kinders. I think sometimes we assume that they have all of this background knowledge, and sometimes kiddos do not, especially now that we're in the middle of this pandemic and no one is really leaving the house. Our kiddos are their background knowledge is really going to be not behind. It's not going to be as intense, because they're not going to the zoo. They're not going on vacations. They're not going to see family members. No one's really leaving. Everyone's kind of stuck in their house. So it's not that anybody's behind. It's just that it is what it is. And you know what? Maybe they haven't been to the zoo, and maybe they don't know that a bunny is also called a hare. Maybe they know a mouse and a bear, but maybe they don't know what a gopher is, or that a raven is a kind of bird, or that a mole and what a mole does. So we just got to build that background knowledge, and you can do that by reading books, right? So we want to build that background knowledge before. So maybe on the first day we read this book, I'm going to introduce the character cards, or introduce the characters and tell them what they look like and who they all are. And maybe I'm going to pass out the character cards. And then as the characters come up in the book, the kiddos come up and they put them, oh, I'm backwards, sorry guys. And maybe they put them up, they put them up as we read. So we'll just pretend like all of those are up in the pie chart. So the first day we talked about the characters, and I wanted to introduce them to them because I didn't know if they all had the background knowledge and knew what all these characters were. Or maybe the first day you read this book, you're going to work on predictions. Maybe what's going to happen next. That's a really good thing to do on the first day when you read a book, is to work on them predicting what's going to happen next. And having those predictions make sense because little learners sometimes don't. They're like, oh, it's going to go to the store. The bear's going to go to the store? Does that prediction make sense? Do you really think that's going to happen? Oh, let's keep reading and check and see. So we never want to like dismiss their ideas, and you can be like, oh, that's an interesting prediction. And then just keep reading and see if it happens or not. So you can talk about the characters on the first day or make predictions. And then maybe the second day you're going to say, okay, we read this book yesterday, and who remembers the characters? So then you can put the character cards up before, and you can develop their reading comprehension before on the second day and say, does anybody remember some of the events? And then you can give out the event cards on the second day. And then as the events come up in the book, they can put the event cards up. And then day 1, you talked about the characters. Day 2, you talked about the events. And then let's say you want to read it again for a third day. Well, the bear feels different ways, right, in this book. So maybe on the third day, you're going to say, okay, we've talked about the characters and we've talked about the events. Now, today I want you to focus on how are these characters feeling in this book? Do their feelings change? We're gonna really listen and look at their faces and how do we think they're feeling? So maybe on the third day, you're going to talk about how the characters are feeling and why. You could have a feeling chart with you. And you could have the kids acting out the feeling faces of the different characters during the different parts of the book. So that would be 3 different ways you could read this book. Now, could you do other things with this book and read it again on a 4th day? Absolutely. Could you read it again and talk about the setting? Yes, you could. It depends on what, again, you pick your objective and you pick your book. So you pick what you need and what your kiddos need, and what you need to cover in your curriculum, obviously, too. So those are some ideas for Bear Snowers on. Now, I'll tell you some other fun ways, some other fun books you can act out. So we talked about using character cards already, right? So you can use those, and you don't have to use like the printable ones that I have. You can also make your own. So you can just use, sorry, I need to use my legs as a little table here. So what I do is with my books that I have retelling cards with, I keep them in a baggie, and then I literally put this baggie on my bookshelf, so that way I know if I'm doing my winter theme, I know which books I have that have character cards because I have, these books are in baggies on my bookshelf. So that way I know which ones I have. And usually each year I always picked 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 books a month to make new retelling cards with. That way you can like slowly grow your collection, because if you buy them, it's awesome if you do, but I think they're kind of expensive, and we all know teachers don't make a lot of money. So this book is 5 Little Penguins Slipping on the Ice, and I didn't buy it. I made my own story cards for this. So I just took some penguins and I got 5 of them, laminated them, and well, I have Velcro, so you could use them on a felt board or magnets, so they could come and stick them. You can't see it, hold on. Move my little guy down here. And they could stick them up on the board as we're reading them, and then you can take them off and count and talk about addition and subtraction as you read this book. So you can make your own story cards, and I love using books like 5 Little Penguins or 5 Monkeys or 5 Frogs to talk. It's a fun way to sneak in counting. It's a fun way to sneak in one-to-one correspondence. into your circle time, and it's a really fun way to get them up and moving because you can give them the cards out, and then you can also have the kids take them off, and you can count as you go. You can put them up, and you can also write the numbers underneath them. That marker doesn't work. You can do shared writing, and you can have the kids come up and write the numerals underneath them too. That way you're, it's called like sharing the pen or doing shared writing. You can add that into your read aloud. I think we forget to do shared writing during math sometimes because we're more focused on numbers than the literacy component. So you can make your own story cards, and you can just use Google Images. Just Google penguin or whatever character you need, and you can either use the clip art image or you could use a real photo. I know, I think I've mentioned this before, but Jan Brett, on her website, she has gorgeous, she drew them photo or illustrations of all the characters. So I just printed these out. You can also like cut them out and put a popsicle stick on them, and you could use a mask. And they could have masks, and your kiddos could come up and act out the story, or just hold it up, or they can hold it up in the air. Especially if your kiddos are little and they're not good at like moving around and like sitting right back down, instead of having them come up and put things up, you can just have them hold it up in the air, or maybe you're literally sitting in like a circle and they can just hold it up so the kids can see it during that part of the book, and then they can put it down. And are the kids gonna play with the cards? Are they gonna do this with the cards? Are they going to put them under the bodies? Are they going to sit on them? Are they going to chew on them? All the things, yes. And I just say, oh, remember we got to keep our story cards really quiet so that way our friends can hear the book. Because sometimes our story cards, if you do this, they get really, really loud. So just, use it as a teachable moment, and teach them how to keep their story cards quiet. So again, it's just Jan Brett's website, and she has them almost, I think, for a lot of her books. She has either the masks, or she has greeting cards, and you can print those and use them like that too. As the greeting cards as story cards. You can also copy, and you guys know I do this all the time. Literally, you can go copy. I would say only classroom use on this, but you can just like take a page in the book and put it on the printer or copy it, and then make story cards out of that. I've done that for Brown Bear, and I just back them on some cardstock. And again, if you have a felt board, you can put Velcro on it, or if you have a magnet board, just put a little piece of magnet on the back. And then I always put this, after we read it, I put this out in the classroom so they can do it independently and reread it again and again and again and again and again, to develop fluency and more reading comprehension, and for them to notice new things in the text, all the things I said earlier. So that way they can do it independently. But you can Google image the book and put it on the front of the bag. And that way you know what the bag is, and the kids know where to, it's like a visual, so they know where to put the story cards back at, especially if you have a few different ones. And it's really good for keeping you organized as well. So like I just copied like the last page of Brown Bear, and then I did like a couple kids for that. And then I did it for Baby Bear, and I would have sometimes more than one of these out at once, so you can tell I did yellow because the book cover is yellow, and then this one was green because the book cover is green. So you can back them on cardstock to make them last longer, and it's a really cheap and inexpensive way to get really awesome story cards that look like the illustrations without having to pay for them. And then on my blog, I have the Snowman at Night book. I have the retelling cards for that, which the link's at the top of this post, and that link will take you to this link. But you can also just go on Pinterest and put in the book name and put in story cards, and sometimes you can find free story cards for the book you're using that week. And again, if you just make like 2 a month, and like I've been teaching now 13 years, I have tons of story cards for tons of books. Or maybe you can share them with your teaching buddy, your teaching partner. You can use one, like if you're both doing winter, you read it one day, or you can read it Monday, Tuesday, and then she can read it Thursday, Friday, or something like that. You can share them too. So that's an easy way to do some story cards. If you don't want to do story cards, you can also make story prop baskets. Or story rocks. I don't use rocks in my classroom because I would usually have, when I taught full day, I had 18 kids, and the rocks were just too small for everybody to see at circle. So I would use a prop basket. I didn't make a lot of these because honestly they're harder to store, but they love prop baskets so much more. So this one is for Grow Flower Grow. She basically feeds this pot, or feeds the seed all of these different foods like spaghetti and cookies and a cheeseburger and a pizza. So as you're retelling the story, the kids put all the different food in the pot, and then at the end she throws it outside and the flower grows. So they just pretend I have some flowers in here, and then they pretend that the flowers grow. So if your kiddos are, especially if they're 3, or maybe they're they need more hands-on, the story cards aren't working for you, try using prop baskets. Those work too, and these are great to put out with the book, and they can retell it during during centers independently or with a friend. I had a little girl one year, she would take the story retelling cards, and we had reading buddies, which were just stuffed animals in my reading center. She would put the stuffed animals in a little circle, and she would read the book, and she would give the stuffed animals these little cards, and she would make them do the story with her. So she kind of played school in the reading center or library center, and it was great. So if your kiddos are saying like, oh, I have to play by myself, have them put out have them retell the story to a reading buddy. That's another fun alternative, especially since I know we're kind of having a distance. And if you can't have stuffed animals, do like a plastic animal that you can clean, like a block center animal, like a dinosaur, or say, oh, you know what, in the reading center this week we have dinosaurs, and you can read and retell your books to the dinosaurs. So that way you read it during circle, and then they can go read it and retell it to the dinosaurs or the superheroes or princesses or, I don't know, dragons or zoo animals, whatever you happen to have that's easy to clean right now. So you can do that. So story cards, story props, and again, the story cards you can buy, or you can make your own, or you can grab them off TPT. That works too. I know Kohl's has stuffed animals that match the books sometimes, so you can watch for those. So you can use stuffed animals, and you don't need to have every character, and you don't have to have like llama. Like if you have a llama at home, you can bring that in, and that can be llama. I had a book one year, and the main character, I forgot. Oh, it was Bark George. You guys know that book, Bark George. They loved that book. And one of my kids had a stuffed animal at home that was a puppy that looked like that dog. So I brought it in, and I was like, oh my gosh, you guys, look, Bark George is here, and he wants us to read the book. And we were talking about how he was the character, but are there other characters that were in that book? And then I wrote them down, and we made a list, or you can draw them since our kiddos can't read. So you don't have to have every character stuffed animal. You just have to have like one. Probably the main character. And that's a really fun way to talk about too, which ones are the main character, which ones are just kind of extra characters, which character is in the book the most. And you can see that's called the main character because that character is in the book the most. So it's a little fun, easy way to kind of talk about some of those story elements with our little learners. And then like I said, I love using stuffed animals. The Dollar Tree has a ton of stuffed animals usually, like 5 little speckled frogs, which you can read for tons of themes, right? Pets, camping, pond, so many themes. I just bought 5 little stuffed animal frogs they had one year. And that way I can read 5 little speckled frogs, and I can put out the actual frogs, and we can like put them out and then take them away as we read, and we can count and act it out that way. So you can also use little, the Dollar Tree has great stuffed animals. You can also use animal like plastic figures. Those work too. It would be kind of more like a reading prop basket, like I was talking about. I know a lot of us get those felt, or not felt, sorry. Well, it's probably felt too. Sometimes they are felt at Target. So a lot of these little foam die cuts are great to use with counting books too. So this one, a lot of these counting books I've gotten from Scholastic over the years. So this one's 5 little bats flying in the sky. So I just have 5 foam bats, but you can write the numbers on them too. So you could write 1 or put 1 dot on it, and that way they could have to put them in number order. But you can also use the little foam die cuts if you don't want to do stuffed animals, or maybe you just happen to have a ton of these for different themes. So you can grab those, and then again, I just keep them, this is like a weird size baggie, but I just keep the foam die cuts in with the little baggie. That way, it's not very thick, but that way it's on my bookshelf. And again, I remember what books I have retelling kits for, because I feel like sometimes when you're teaching, and by the time, like my plan time was always at the end of it was at the last hour of the day. My brain sometimes was like fried. Like teaching wore me out that day. So I wouldn't remember, oh yeah, I have that retelling kit in this file cabinet. Oh my gosh, no way. So I ended up putting them again in baggies. So it's like, oh yeah, I have that retelling. Perfect. I can use that today, and we can I'll put a counting objective in for the read aloud that day. So you can also just act out books. Like you don't have to always have props, which are fun. Don't get me wrong. They're super fun. But like going on a bear hunt, you can like have them act out with motions. They can go through the grass. You can run. And this is really great too for those months when you cannot get outside. Have them push their hands together to make that noise. They're pushing, and say, oh, how loud can you make it? And have them do it on their legs, because then they're giving them sensory input. When they're rubbing their hands together, squeezing themselves, or patting their legs, you're giving them sensory input. So that will help a lot of your wigglers at Circle, because I'm honestly, what 3-year-old doesn't wiggle at Circle? Let's be honest. Everybody does. If you watch me, I can't even sit still during Facebook Live. So, I mean, how can I expect my little 3s to sit still? So, adding those movements in, even if, like, let's say you're not reading, we're going on a bear hunt, maybe you notice your kids are getting really, really wiggly, and you're reading a different book, and, like, maybe the character's running, and that isn't the focus or your objective, but you're like, oh my gosh, he's running. Everybody, let's pretend to run just like Sam in the book, and you can pretend to run. So you can add it in, even though you're not like, oh, we're acting out a story today. Add that in if you think you're losing them, because I guarantee you if their friends start doing this, then they will start doing that, and you'll have all your group back, and you'll get them refocused and dialed back in, and you can finish your book with success. So going on a bear hunt, and I know there's all the different versions of going on a bear hunt now. I've seen them in Scholastic. From Head to Toe by Eric Carle is great. I don't know if you guys know this one, but I am a seal and I can clap my hands. Can you do it? And then they say, I can do it. So this book is great too, because it also has repeated text. And you can say, oh, did you hear that? I think I heard that on the last page. And you can have your kiddos echo back to you, or have them help you say the repeated text. That's another good way, one, for them to notice that the author is repeating text in the book, and you're getting them to participate in your circle, and it's a fun way for them to pay attention and to kind of keep them engaged. So this is a great book because you can have them say the repeated text, and you can have them do the movements or the sounds of all the animals. ABC books can sometimes, I think, be long, but Alphabet Under Construction is a fun one to act out because you can act out all the different things. So like he knits, so they can pretend to knit. What else do they do in the book? He prunes, so you can say, okay, use your fingers like scissors and prune whatever, the bush, whatever it is. One cue for quilts and say, okay, everybody got your needle and can you quilt? So sometimes a book that you wouldn't think you could act out, you can, especially if there's a lot of great verbs in there. This one has a lot of great new vocabulary words. So that's a fun one to act out. So The Bridge is Up. I love this book for a transportation theme, and it's also a great book because the character has to wait. So if your kids are struggling with waiting or taking turns, this is a great book to read. And you can get all the different vehicles. You can these are all the different vehicles that slowly come into the book and they have to wait. But you can also act out how they're feeling when they wait, because waiting is hard. So you can talk about that as a social skill, but to make it more interactive, you can have them make the feeling faces and the body movements to match the feeling for the characters. Because I think we often forget to, or at least I did sometimes when I would be teaching, I would say, show me your feeling face. When I should have said, show me how you feel with your face and your body. So if you're mad, you got a grimace on your face and your eyebrows are down and your fists are clenched and your cheeks are clenched, but like your whole body is doing it, that feeling, because we want them to learn body language. And then they're also getting more sensory input because they're using their whole body to act out that feeling rather than just their face. And then you can obviously do that for feeling books. This one is great. It's called In My Heart, A Book of Feelings, and this little girl feels different ways. But other times it says like my heart feels strong. And this book has some fun feelings that they don't normally say, like strong. But you can act out the feelings in this book. You can also, when you're doing vocabulary, you can also bring in, instead of bringing in photographs for the characters, you can bring in little photographs of whatever that vocabulary word is, or something showing that vocabulary word in like a real photograph rather than like an illustration. And if you are struggling with coming up with a meaning for that word, put it on a little Post-it note and just put it on that page. And that way, because teaching is hard and circle can be tricky, and sometimes our brains just aren't as quick when we're doing circle time. So if there's something you want to make sure you point out in the picture or the illustration, put a little Post-it note on that page in the book. And that way, as you're reading it, you can pull it off or just leave it up there and say, oh, that's just my note for me because I wanted to help you. I wanted to show you guys this word I found in this book, which is doing two things, right? It's reminding you to point out a word, and two, it's showing them what the vocabulary word, and three, it's showing them that writing serves a purpose because you're writing a note to help you remember something. So all the good things come from putting Post-it notes in books. And that way too, the next time you read it next year, it'll be in there ready to go. And you'll be good to go for next year because your Read Aloud will be prepped if you have Post-it notes in it, or a little note card at the front or something. So yeah. So those are my ideas for you for Read Aloud. So we are going to read books and reread them sometimes, not all the time, but you can reread them to develop fluency, reading comprehension, vocabulary, concepts of print, phonemic awareness, text structure, other objectives like science things and math concepts and social skills. So we're reading books for different purposes, different times, and we're making it fun and engaging by acting it out, using story cards that either you made or you printed or you purchased or your school did if you're lucky, or you using maybe a prop basket or stuffed animals or cutouts, or maybe your students can make your story cards for you too. So I hope you guys loved this Facebook Live. I will see you guys next week, 7 p.m. Central Time. If there is something you are thinking of that you want me to do a Facebook Live on, let me know. There's also a list at the top of this post of my past Facebook Lives, which is gigantic. It's a huge list, so check it out. And you guys have an amazing night, and I will talk to you soon.